Sorry for the lateness. I apologize for the lateness. Flash components sitting on the stage. I have a list box, a text area, actually 2 text areas, and a button. So I'm loading an RSS feed from the Adobe site, and it's going to show a list of the different titles in the top box, in the list box. Then you can click to load the details into the next box and the link, and then you can click the visit to actually go to the site where the articles are coming from. Very simple stuff, just giving each component a common instance name, so RSS list, details text, whatever. Just some very simple naming conventions. We'll quickly take a look at the component though, which is where most of this is happening. So I don't know how many of you guys have used the XML connector component before. It can be a valuable component depending on what it is you're doing, but at the same time, it can be extremely problematic. If you're not doing anything that's too customized, and you're just doing some very simple load features, you just want to quickly load some standard XML files and display some information, then the XML connector is fine. But if you want to get into some more advanced customized things, being able to take full control over your dynamic data, then you can have some issues using the XML component, and you're better off just scripting it all yourself, building your own functions and classes and whatnot, or using other ones that are already available that do the job. So this is the basic schema here. This is coming from the XML file, which just basically determines how I'm going to be loading the information into my various components. So like I said, I have 3 different components, so I'm breaking up the XML feed into 3 areas. I'm not actually displaying everything here that I could. I could display title, author, there's other things that could be displayed, but in this scenario I'm only showing 3 areas. So we're going to be seeing the title of the actual article, which is going to pop up in the list box over here. We're going to see the link, which is going to show in the link box down at the bottom, and then the description, which will show up in the details text area. So I'm only going to display those 3 tags inside of the XML schema, though as you can see there are other ones that I could possibly display. This is sort of an embedded object here because I'm using it in multiple ways so that I can first load the above information into my text area, into my list box, and then I can wait for user interaction so that they can click on that to then load the rest of the information that's coming from the feed into the bottom 2 boxes. I'll quickly run it for you so you can see how this works. The one nice thing though about using components sometimes is that there's little code involved. So right off the bat, it loads this feed coming from Macromedia, and it's displaying the titles in my list box up at the top. So these are all the titles that are currently associated with this feed. And then when I click on one of those titles, it will then reveal the rest of the information in the bottom 2 boxes. So I have the ability to see a small description in my details box right here, and then it shows the link in the input box. Now I cheated a bit with the link. part of this, because essentially all I'm doing is, with the visit button on an on release, I'm just converting the string, which is being displayed in the link box, into a URL to be represented as a URL. So I'm not actually handling it like a true link. So I'm kind of cheating a little. It was just an easier way to do it. I can show you the code for that. But as you can see, it took me to the page relative to that article, and if I click on any one of them, it will always take me to the appropriate page. So it works well. So now let's just take a quick look at what's happening here. I don't know how many people in here. I know that I have quite a few students that are sitting here now who've all done a lot of this XML stuff. I actually had them build it in class, so it's a pretty simple project to build, but very useful. We'll just quickly take a look at some of the bindings. So I'm only binding 3 of the areas. I'm binding the component. First of all, I'm binding the main item. So it's not going to let me do that now. No. But I'm just binding the list box to show the lists, and then I'm binding it to the description and to the details. I'd have to go through the whole process to show you how to do this, but if you've done this before, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it's very easy. It's as easy as just loading your schema, and then I initially choose the array. So in this case here, the RDF object, which is the first item that I want to list, and then I link that to my list box here just to show the list. And then I do the same with the next 2 components. So I choose, when I'm under my bindings, I click. If I wanted to add the about, for example, so I would just click on the about string, I would choose that binding. And so now I have the about in here. I would want to choose out because I want the information to come in. It's receiving the XML component, so I send it out to my component, and then I bind it to one of the components on the stage. So I could bind it to another text area and then have that information displayed inside the text area. I know I'm moving through this pretty quickly, but it is simple stuff, and you can find an awful lot of information just about any flash book or anywhere on the internet on how to bind your components. The more interesting one is the other one I want to show you that's all code based. But this is essentially how the basic XML components will allow you to create a very simple RSS reader to load lists and information. So it's really, really simple, and if you want to go this way, you could. And then you could use some styles to spruce up your components a little more. I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this particular file. The one other thing, though, I just want to quickly mention is that make sure in the parameters, and actually that's the one thing I do want to say, and the way this file is set up, I can only actually load 1 feed. So if you look at the bottom here, I specifically have my XML connector loading only 1 feed from the Macromedia site. What I find interesting is they still have all these old macromedia.com extensions out there that have all this information that's laying around that nobody's using anymore, but Adobe hasn't gotten rid of half that. So there's data just sitting around that you can actually play with and use to beta test and develop stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyways, that's a whole other story. So I'm just quickly feeding off, and in this one case here, I'm actually just contacting an RDF file. But it's very simple to copy and paste any extension in there. You will load an RDF, it will load an XML, it will load an RSS, and it will even load a PHP.RSS, which is another variation. As far as I know, though, you can't handle things like Atom or, what's the other one, PHML or something like that?
SOAP?
Well, you can handle SOAP, but with SOAP you can't use an XML connector. So then you're going to have to use a different binding, a data binding that's going to, actually you'd be better off using SOAP. You would just post to the PHP file, which is the next one I'm going to show you, which is easier. Actually, use a web service component. For those of you familiar with SOAP and you want to use SOAP, you'd have to use a web service connector. You'd have to connect to your web service that launches the string for the SOAP to bring in the RDF. But then when you start getting involved in that and all these different layers and multifaceted connections, there's no point in using the components. If you hand code it all, you use one file on your end, one external action script and a PHP, and you can get it all done really easily. So I just wanted to quickly show you this. And the cheat for the button, if you're interested, is very simple. So all I'm doing for the visit button is essentially telling the player to handle the text that's appearing in the link_txt as a URL. So to take that text and launch it as a get URL. So it fakes the button into thinking that it's actually launching a URL and that the button's actually connected to a get URL, which is not the case. For those of you who worked with components before, you'll know how difficult it is to actually get the buttons, the UI buttons, to properly function as a real button outside of Flash. It's very easy to get it to work with inside of Flash projects and to connect to other components and other FLAs and so on, but when you start to leave the player, it becomes extremely problematic. I don't know if other people have experienced that, but I have many, many times. So when I'm dealing with components, I'll use a lot of components, but I won't use the button components. I'll make my own buttons. It's a lot simpler. Okay, like I said, this is the more uninteresting one and kind of an old-fashioned way to do it, which is funny because it's less than a year old, but it's already old-fashioned. Before I move on to the next file, which I think is a lot cooler, are there any questions on just using the XML connectors and some basic components for RSS? Has everyone here already done this stuff before? You already have, that's what I figured. So it's somewhat of a waste of time. Okay, no problem. Let's move on to something bigger and better. I told Sean this could be cool or it could blow because it's not really the most interesting of topics, RSS. And it's not really that difficult either, it's pretty simple. Okay, a lot of different ways to do RSS. This is a project that's been kind of on the works now for some time. I'm not the only person who's working on this project. I'm working on this with a few other people over the internet who've been producing RSS-based Flash projects now for some time, for a couple of years. And we're working together to create a project that will allow you to do a little more similar to, I don't know if you guys know Nuance.com. Nuance.com NewsMonkey. Has anyone ever seen the NewsMonkey Flash RSS feeds? It's a pretty cool application that was built using a combination of Flex and Flash that dynamically retrieves huge databases of RSS feeds from all over the internet and loads it into tree components and then allows you to launch multiple feeds and search for feeds. It's a really cool application. So there are some stuff out there. There are some sites taking advantage of Flash and using Flash as a subscription-based RSS forum if you want to do that. But for me, I think the most important part about it is being able to use this in your sites, to be able to build a Flash website or something in Flex and have the ability to actually launch other people's RSSs, which is becoming more popular to show related information on your own site, or related information to what your site is all currently about, especially if you're involved in communities, developer communities, or different things like that. You'll find a lot of that now, especially that blogs and WordPress and all this other crap is becoming so popular now. Everyone wants to build their site like a blog, so it's so popular, RSS is becoming popular too. Personally, I prefer the old school days of newsgroups. You guys remember newsgroups? It was a hell of a lot easier. So currently what this application does is we have it, it's not going to, the weird thing about this is the way it runs with the PHP and the external action script. Can't run it on a local host, which I don't understand why, but we've tried multiple times. Won't work properly on a local host and won't run in the Flash environment. So you can test the design and the overall layout and see if things are actually happening, but to test it properly, you got to upload it and run it. And I already have one online that I'm going to show you, the same file. Just to give you a quick idea of what's happening here, this particular project is using a combination of different things. So we're in the process of adding a new component to this that will allow users to actually sign in, log in, and then create their own list. So you'd be looking at someone's member profile, and they have these are their current choices. So now we're revamping this whole application using Flex instead of Flash. Originally we started building this in Flash about a year ago, and now since we never got a chance to release it, and so many other people did Flash RSS, we're changing our way of thinking. So this would be a member's profile. You would have already logged in. This would be your profile and have the ability to create your own available feeds. So you would be able to use this as like a subscription-based RSS reader where you would have all of the different feeds here that you've chosen to have as your main feeds. And then you'd have a manual feeds option where if you know other feeds that you don't necessarily want to load as your main ones or feeds that other people have told you about that you want to preview, you can enter the feed in the box, press go, and it will load the feed in here. The cool thing about this is it's actually only using one component, and the only component it uses is the text area to launch the actual feed, but I've applied more code to it, which I couldn't do in MX. I've done more to it to make it look a little better. Just to quickly give you an idea before I go into the code, when you're online and you launch it, this is how it would run. So I could click on any of these, and now it's contacting my AS, which contacted a PHP script, which then initialized the feed inside of this component, which allowed me to produce the information in a very clean, easy way for the user to go through it. We have it set up currently where we're going to start being able to load different kinds of feeds so that you can incorporate pictures, websites, and be able to load other things inside of here, especially Flash now, or Flex. Because of Flex, we'll have the ability to launch websites in here. We'll have the ability to launch more applications inside this window. We have a version, and I was running late and I forgot it, but I have a version that's working on a Pocket PC and that's working on a Nokia phone. So we've been able to produce one in Flash that runs in a phone properly and will allow the information to come in. You can use the Flash RSS. With the Apollo project, I've been talking to Mike Potter, who was here at the last Flash in Toronto, and we're going to use the Apollo project to create an offline version of the RSS reader so that you can install this on your desktop and you'll be able to launch from your desktop dynamically all your RSS feeds. Just to show you how, so they all pretty much work the same way. I can contact any one of these feeds that I want, and I can launch them inside of here. And the same thing goes with clicking on any of the links to go to any of the websites. I just quickly grab a link from inside of here. So if I choose, go to this XML component here. So here's the Macromedia one that we had. I'm just going to copy and paste that into my manual feeds box. And it will allow me to, so I can realistically launch any feed I want now. So it has the ability to add your own feeds, your own custom feeds, and it has the ability to launch a manual feeds. We're going to add a save option, so if you were to click save, it would then add that option to the left side of the screen so you'd have that new RSS save. But the importance of this is being able to create an entire application that will work online or offline, installable, or run on mobile technology as well, that will allow people to use the RSS feeds that they want whenever they want to, which I think is a pretty cool idea. I'm going to show you what it was based on, because it was based on the Nuance News Monkey. But before we do that, let's just quickly take a look at how the code's working. The code's very simple. In this particular example here, I didn't have time to go through all the files, but this example here, I'm not using a dynamic menu, so these are just standard movie clips that are sitting on the stage that I'm contacting my external script with in order to get the function happening. Very simple stuff. I import my process RSS, which is the custom classes that were written. It's a combination of 3 or 4 other ActionScript guys who helped write this that allow me to import my feeds. Some basic styles for my components sitting on the stage, and then essentially the way this one is working without using anything dynamic, I'm just allowing myself with the click of the MC to launch my newsfeed function, which I created in my external file, and then to use a load feed function, which then allows me to specify whatever feed it is that I want to load. And I'm loading multiple feeds, RDF, XML. It doesn't really matter what the format is as long as it's supported in any current version of RSS. The cool stuff is what is all happening inside the process RSS. So these are the custom classes that allow me to essentially redisplay the RSS information similar to the way the XML component would display the schema. I'm using the code to display the schema the way I want to inside of my text area. So I have to declare a few variables here to target my text areas, to be able to initiate, I'm calling it proxy URL, to be able to initiate a string that will allow me to launch the URL and load it, and then setting up some basic variables here so that I can create my array, and I can create my XML file and be able to properly display my schema inside of the component. Because what's happening here when you click the button and I launch the load feed, I have to then take that XML, and in this way here I don't need to parse it. So I'm not using any parsers, I don't have to use SOAP, I don't have to use XML RPC, I don't have to install anything extra in order to parse the information so that I can properly display. This is just a quick and easy and efficient way to create some code that just allows me to do this. So some basic onload events here that will allow me to populate my nodes with the information that I want to use. That will allow me to set the targets of where I'm loading all of that information, and then where I'm actually setting up the array that builds my XML. So this is all the standard XML AS stuff that people hate. I don't know about you guys, but I really hate the way Flash codes XML. I hate ActionScript and XML. I think it's a huge pain in the ass. I think Flex does it way better. Who hasn't seen code like this before? Who's not familiar with using XML AS stuff? Anybody not familiar with this? One person. You guys have all done this stuff before? Similar stuff? It's a real pain in the ass, as you can see. There are some very complicated ways you have to go about figuring out how you're going to take the information and display it appropriately inside of a component. It's just a standard text box, right? So it's just a text area. And I just want to load an HTML, an XML file in there. But I can't simply just launch, what we used to do was create an HTML document or a PHP document that had the string that was loading the XML for you, and then you could use a load HTML function and then just embed an HTML page inside of Flash. But that's not really efficient, and now you're having to go through multiple different files to get what you need. Now in Flash 8, and some of this from MX2, some of this is a little legacy, we can simplify, if you want to call it simplify, we can simplify the process by being able to replicate, I guess you could say, the way in which you lay out a specific schema and rebuild it in ActionScript by specifying how we want our parent-child relationships to work so that we can appropriately display each line of text in the XML properly. I don't think there's a better way to say that. I think I did an alright job. It's pretty complicated, actually. It was a real bitch to learn some of this stuff. This is the section that's actually doing this, that's actually allowing me to identify each variable. So if you look here, we have our title, link, description. So these are the different variables that I have that I've data typed as strings that will allow me to place each one as one node. So what happens is this becomes the first node, second node, third node in my XML file that's being loaded exactly as the schema would load it, and then I can display it as dumbed down HTML inside of my text area. And it gets even more complicated because then you still have to go through error checks and everything else and to make sure that it's actually being loaded. But one of the key components to this is where it launches, that's right, where I launch my actual PHP script, which is what initiates this whole process. It's buried in all this code. So what I'm doing here in this line so this line here, new feed equals new process RSS, output TA, which is the text box, text area. This is where I'm taking the function that I defined inside of my external action script, and I'm pushing it through my actual process RSS to launch a PHP file, which is going to handle all the variables that initiate the connection between the remote server so that I can properly propagate the string from one place to another to display the information. And what's so funny about it is the action script is such a pain in the ass, and it's like 6 lines of PHP. And it's these 6 lines of PHP which is key for the entire application. The entire application essentially really only needs these 6 lines that just allows me to define my RSS variables and to make sure that I can properly contact an HTTPS outside of the Flash player so that I can read these files and then push them through my action script so I can retrieve the information I need from the remote feed, right, whatever it is, .xml, .rdf, so I can retrieve that feed and then push that information through my external action script file so that it essentially parses it, but not really, essentially converts it into something that the action script player understands and then throws it inside of the component. Yeah, that's basically how it works. But it took a long time to figure out how to properly do that. And there are 1,000,001 ways you can do it. Currently, there is some very cool stuff now available which we're working with. Where the hell is this? There's a whole class of objects that you can download. Michael Nelson, I think his name's Michael Nelson. It's got a whole bunch of RSS Flash classes and Flash components that are very cool that allow you to do this better. And I've been playing around with them for a bit. They're not bad. Yeah, RSS Data Factory. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the RSS Data Factory. Anyone ever heard of the RSS Data Factory? The RSS Data Factory is pretty cool. This is what allowed me to build some of the Pocket PC stuff and some of the mobile technology. So it gives me a whole library of other classes and things that I can use. I don't know why I don't have a back version over here. I should have already had one that was open. So there's just a bunch of different ways in here that it teaches you how to build the proper methods that you need to receive RSS objects from various different ways. So you can load all kinds of different channel feeds through Flash, through Flex, and it allows you to create some more custom feeders outside of the current ActionScript AS. One of the difficult things is right now we're working on a way to create an RSS publisher. And we're using, do you guys know RSS Editor? RSS Editor is a pretty cool application. I use it for a lot of different stuff. It's a neat little publisher that just really quickly allows me to build a very simple XML feed. Give myself title, links, descriptions. I'll show you one that I've already done. So essentially we're going to take the core engine of this application, rebuild it in Flash. so that you can publish RSS feeds inside of Flash. So it quickly allows you to create the basic content, set up all your entries, all the information you want in each entry, allows you to preview your feed and then export it as an XML, as a .xml file or a .rss file. So we're going to use this engine inside of the current Flash RSS reader, so that not only will this be a custom like member-based profile subscription where you can create whatever RSS feeds you want and your own profile, but you'll also be able to publish feeds through here as well. So we'll give you the same kind of WYSIWYG in the center there that will allow you to extract information. You want to do it so that you can extract information from an HTML file. So that it can be set up so that you can load an HTML or PHP document and then convert it into an XML document and then publish it right away to your RSS reader. I'm really stretching this all out because there's not a whole lot to say about RSS, so I'm just talking a lot more than I need to. And I'm getting that, get the hell off the stage. Well, I was late, it's my own fault. Any final questions on, anyone's interested, I can email you the Pocket PC version.
I'm wondering, most of the stuff I've done with RSS is with JavaScript and Ajax.
It's a pain in the ass, I don't use it anymore.
One thing with JavaScript and Ajax it's becoming a lot more popular and it avoids all this craziness is basically with JSON objects.
Yeah.
So basically you convert your RSS feed JSON and then very easy to use at that point. I haven't seen too much of that in ActionScript world. Is there a reason?
In Flex, there's a whole JSON library that Adobe's put out.
So why can't you have that on the
Well, that was going to be my
PHP?
question. Do you have your Flex examples here?
No, I didn't bring my Flex example.
Even on the PHP, you can convert it to JSON right there.
Yeah.
See,
I'm sure there's PHP
we're rebuilding this,
IUCF and do the
base
same
application,
thing.
yeah, we're rebuilding in Flex, which is twice as efficient. And like I said with the Apollo project, when I spoke to Mike Potter, we're going to create an installable error file that they're calling them, right? And we already have one that's currently functioning on a Pocket PC. One of the things we're also working on is to get this to also read podcasts, to launch podcasts inside of the Flash player.
And I'm just wondering, are you doing XML to JSON conversions on the server or on the client?
We want to move away from XML as much as possible and start moving more towards those areas. Yeah, because the XML is becoming a problem, and there are something like over 100,000 different services now. It's ridiculous. Sean's getting a little antsy. Is that it? Well, you can all talk to me after. I could have made it more interesting, but it's not. It's news. It's just news, man. What's happening? Gold's up, copper's down. Thank you.